Untouched nature, right in the heart of Germany. Andreas Kieling has embarked on a journey to rediscover his home country. He is tracing the border that formerly separated the East from West. It's been 20 years since the wall came down, and on its remaining rubble, a natural paradise has slowly grown. This natural path leads to surprising discoveries, where Andreas will encounter unusual animal species and where he will forge new friendships. Andreas is about to embark on one of Germany's greatest adventures. It's mid-May, and Andreas Kieling has arrived at the Sculpture Park of German Unity, located in the Rhone Mountains. Surprisingly, it is not raining today. The Rhone is known for its rainy weather. Andreas is on a hiking trip that will take him from the Rhone Mountains to the Vara Valley Lakes. This is not an easy hike. The Rhone Mountains are very hilly. Yet there is always time to get sidetracked.
Now that's an unusual sighting. 2 vipers.
Seems like they're enjoying soaking up the sun right underneath the barbed-wired border fence, but catching them takes some guts.
Okay, I've got it. But I have to be careful not to let go of his head, otherwise he'll bite. This is a male viper that is fully grown. But it's not the size that matters with these snakes. The risk factor here is measured by the intensity of their venom. Actually, the smaller they are, the more poisonous they are. You can even see his fangs right here, right next to the venom glands. When vipers bite their prey, they will first release it. About 10 minutes later, their prey succumbs to the venom. Vipers will then follow the scent of their bitten prey until they find it. By that time, they will either be dead or completely paralyzed, and the vipers can just go ahead and swallow them, head first. Releasing a viper is a very exciting event. However, it is not recommended you try this at home. It's also important to remember that vipers are a protected species, though for some inexplicable reason, their numbers have been declining further and further in Germany. When you release a snake, you have to make sure there is no way for it to suddenly turn around and bite. That's why it's recommended to release snakes on grass. It's amazing to see how fast a viper can orient itself and find its way back to its cave. Gone already.
Andreas and his dog Cleo are now trekking at an elevation of 800 meters. Even though it was nice and warm down in the valley, it seems as if spring is just arriving on the mountain now.
The Rhone is known for its great wide open spaces. Man, am I out of breath. I am currently on my way to the Wasserkuppe, which is the highest peak in the Rhone Mountains. They've got one of Germany's oldest gliding schools up there, and a great gliding spot as well. I'd love to check out the scenery here from up above.
And with that said, Andreas leaves his hiking gear behind and sets forth to explore the region from above. The Rhone Mountains are a true paradise for gliders. Andreas discovers typical basalt rock formations, which were shaped millions of years ago when molten lava solidified. The Rhone Mountains also feature the Black Moor, one of the largest highland moors in all of Europe. And just a kilometer to the east, the former east-west border strip can be seen.
It's not easy to recognize from up here where the former border path is. I can't even see where Bavaria is, let alone Thuringia. Plus, it's easy to get dragged to the east with these strong winds here.
the gliding trip comes to an end sooner than desired. And remarkably, Andreas lands right back where he started.
I was wondering if during the GDR times, there was ever someone who landed accidentally outside of the designated flight and landing zone. I was told by the airfield pilots here that you were one of those unlucky individuals.
Yes, that's right.
Well, hello then.
I'm Mr. Peters.
Andreas Kieling.
Yes, I drifted into the east back in October 1981. I was practicing a lot at the time in order to prepare for a practical exam that was part of my gliding school training. One of the flights happened very spontaneously, but it had a bad start. All of a sudden, a gust of wind lifted me at least 1,000 meters up in the air. I realized that I was completely off course, and that's when I eventually ended up in the east. The GDR, or the Russians, actually had been observing us on their radar. As soon as my trainer and I crossed the border strip, we were not surprised to see a helicopter taking off behind us, and then all of a sudden appearing right in front of us as we were landing.
And then what? Did the helicopter follow you?
Yes, the winds that the helicopter blades produced exerted so much force on our glider that the motor hub opened right up and our plane went like this.
In the air?
Yes, right in the air. Gray fumes went right by us, and I asked my gliding instructor what they had thrown at us. We did a 180-degree turn and flew towards the east once again. And that's when we landed on a stubble field.
But wasn't it obvious to them that you were simply sports pilots?
Yes, I'm sure they knew, but that's not what they were after. They caught us, put us in jail for 14 days, charged us as guilty for having trespassed over the state border, and for attempting to run away from them, instead of acknowledging that we were simply trying to reposition our glider back towards the west. We were sentenced to 1.5 years in prison, which ultimately included the cost of bailing us out. It was all part of a manipulative foreign exchange trade, which I was completely unaware of at the time.
So does this mean that the Federal Republic of Germany had to pay to bail you out in order to free you from the GDR?
Yes, that was quite the...
May I ask how much they paid?
Well, it was standard practice at the time. The German Federal Republic had paid 80,000 German marks to bail us out.
So I guess the GDR really benefited from these off-course landings.
They certainly did.
Incredible.
Still, to this day, Mr. Peters enjoys flying around in his glider.
So now I'm at a helicopter landing zone that is located on the top of the Wasserkuppe. Behind me you can see a round building which houses a former listening post. It was used for spying on military activities that were taking place beyond the Iron Curtain in the east.
The military no longer use this radar station, though it is certainly a favorite amongst hikers, who use it as an observation deck for the entire area. Heavy clouds, cold weather, and rain are moving towards the region tonight. Bad news for Andreas, who had big plans for the following morning. Generally, the best time to look for native animals of the Black Moor is right after sunrise. That is why Andreas is up and about so very early.
Cleo, sit. Over there we've got 2 black grouses. There are only about 15 to 20 of these birds left in the Rhone Mountains, and usually you can't even get closer than 250 to 300 meters to these birds. Black grouse used to be very common in Germany back in the day, especially in hinterlands and moorlands. But since the landscape changed quite drastically here, their population has declined quite a bit, and today they are one of Germany's rarest bird species.
Luckily, there are more black grouse to be found in the Scandinavian moorlands, where the courtship dance can still be observed. The male birds generally engage in a ritual fight, where the female gets to observe the whole spectacle from high above in a tree. Only the strongest male will be able to win the female over. This sort of conquest is done rather crudely. The act is brief, yet very flamboyant. Andreas doesn't want to scare away the black grouse, so he keeps his distance. Even though the climate here is rather cold, for some residents, these are ideal living conditions.
That's a male alpine newt. He's only got one thing on his mind right now, and that's to reproduce. The mating process is quite ironic, actually. It all happens underwater, whereby the male has to hold his breath. If you had a chance to smell one of these alpine newts, you'd realize how bitter and astringent their odor is. This is a protective mechanism against predators, such as birds. Well then, good luck, little guy, with holding your breath.
The moor this morning is very wet. Neither Andreas nor Cleo are happy with the weather. Even the carnivorous sundew plant is halfway submerged in water. The weather puts a strain on everyone.
I guess the weather can't always be nice on a 1,400-kilometer hike along the Greenbelt. But weather shouldn't surprise me, given that we're in a high precipitation area between Thuringia, Bavaria, and Hessen. Moors only survive due to heavy rains. They cannot utilize groundwater. But Cleo and I feel we've reached our limit for today.
May is also one of the rainiest months of the year here.
There's a good reason for having a footbridge right at this spot, because the swampy soil beneath the trail is not very safe. 90% of the moors in Germany are dried out, actually. But this one here is still quite wet, and the peat has not reached the right color yet. Peat is actually made out of rotting plant material, which contains methane gas. The whole thing slowly turns into fossil fuels. And I assume it tastes good too? Cleo, come out! Out! Coming across a moor like this is very exciting, especially for a botanist. There are so many little discoveries to be made. I mean, here, take a look at these cranberries. Even though they're not the tastiest of all, they're packed with vitamin C. I'm sure Cleo wouldn't mind one. But we don't want to get sick, do we? Well, I think we should continue on our trip now.
Ah, much better. As they make their way down towards the valley, the area begins to dry up. It's a completely different world altogether at last. On their way, Andreas and Cleo come across rowan sheep, regarded as a culinary delicacy in this region. These animals are also known as la mouton de la reine, or the Queen's sheep, since their culinary reputation has even reached the farthest corners of France.
That's a buck. He's gonna ram right up against me. So actually, these animals are quite shy, though these ones here seem to like me. Their meat is very lean and very delicious. It doesn't contain that typical taste you get from sheep meat, and that's why it's so popular.
Andreas says goodbye to the Rowan region and heads north. The mountain range soon turns into lower elevated hills, and even the weather seems to be getting better. It's back to the border strip, where the remnants of the Cold War can still be felt in the air. Remarkably today, the border is surrounded by a rather pristine environment. Deserted Russian signs, however, remind us of a rather unpleasant past. The enemy border towers were built so close to one another that the guards were able to look at each other in the eye. But of all the sections making up the border strip, why was this specific part watched over so closely?
One of the most historically significant locations of the Rhone is the high ridge area known as Point Alpha. Alpha in itself already signifies that this must have been an important area. Point Alpha was one of the closest spots between the two armed enemy bodies, the Warsaw Pact Organization and NATO.
It's definitely not the most inviting scenery around, and this fellow right here must have been used to scare people away. Cleo is really excited about this site, but appears to be cautious at the same time.
Ja, Cleo, gibt's denn sowas?
Well, Cleo, look at that. This must be a friend of yours.
Ja.
Not shabby at all. It's a typical German Shepherd from the times of the GDR.
Die waren nämlich gerade.
Back then, they weren't bred down as much as they are today. Actually, it's just a statue.
It's certainly an impressive model of a watchdog. No one would have been able to get past him for sure. Andreas continues walking in between both fronts. Given the local conditions of the surroundings at the time, this area was regarded as a military danger zone. The West strongly believed that an attack from the East was an imminent threat here.
It's interesting that the Americans thought that a massive attack would occur here. Well, there's a rather easy explanation for this. The Rhine-Main area, a strategically significant target, was only 75 kilometers away from here. The large tanks that belonged to the Warsaw Pact required a lot of surface area for successful operation. A narrow valley wouldn't be enough, so this wide area here was ideal.
Luckily, this military scenario never materialized. Not too far away from here, Andreas meets up with Bertold Ducker, a man who managed to escape the GDR 45 years ago.
There we go. We're back on the Kohlenweg, the path I've had the chance to trek on so many times by now.
Both have a lot to catch up on. They were only teenagers when they decided to flee East Germany and take refuge in the West.
So I guess when the border guards saw you passing through here, they didn't suspect anything, because you were one of the country boys and cow herders who lived in this area. You must have really seized just the right moment to escape through the high grass here and pass the border.
Well, actually, the border guards knew me. They also checked my pass and ID card, which I had to have on me at all times during the GDR period. They were lying here underneath the tree, and that's when I decided I would escape, because I realized the time was running out. If I wanted to get a formal education, I had to escape, but the problem was that I hadn't brought my workshop tools along with me. I went up to the young border guards, told them that the cows were tentatively being taken care of, and I would need to go home to pick up a book that I had forgotten. They told me I would need to do that rather quickly and come back. And so when I heard that, I ran to my hometown of Geismar as fast as I could, picked up my stuff, and grabbed my bike so that I could return to the border as quick as possible.
And you went back home for what, the pliers?
Yes, in order to pick up the pliers from my father's tool shed. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to get through the fence. You know, so that I could crawl through the numerous fences.
So that means that you were actually moving through the death strip.
Yes, I was doing just that. But I was also crawling on the ground, right along the course of the stream, so that no one could see me. Believe it or not, I was only 16 at the time. I plunged the pliers into the soil and pulled myself forward. But on one occasion while I was doing that, I poked through something that was hard. It must have been a mine box, and I was extremely lucky that the mine did not explode. I got up and ran across to the cow barn as fast as I could.
But wasn't that already in the West?
Yeah, it was. The border was only 20 meters away from this cow barn here. I took refuge here for a while so that I could scan the area and make sure it was safe for me to proceed. It all happened right inside this cow barn here. It's nice to see that it's still around.
And so that means you were safe after all. You had practically crossed the border. I think I also saw some old border milestones over there.
I must have really had a lot of guardian angels watching over me.
Yes, I know. Even I was shot at the border back then. And believe me, 30 years later, I still have nightmares about my escape. What about you? Do you still think about your escape sometimes?
Of course, it has haunted me my entire life. Though in the beginning, things were more blurry. The older I get, however, the more I tend to think about it and ask myself how people were able to do such horrible things.
Today, it seems unreal that people were shot here only 20 years ago in the shadows of these now decaying watchtowers. Andreas is deep in thought as he moves on with his journey. Another river crosses the path that Andreas is walking on. The scenery here is governed by the meandering Vara River, which cut through both the east and the west. At certain sections, the Vara River also acted as part of the actual border, and that's how small neighboring villages such as Philippsthal and Vasha were separated and declared as either belonging to the east or to the west. Today, the valley that surrounds the Vara River is quiet and peaceful, featuring beautiful and tranquil mineral-rich lands and meadows alongside the riverbanks.
So, looking around this wet grassland, I can mostly see regular grass growing here. But of course we've got tons of witchgrass here as well. And what's this? A salt stain. That's interesting. Salt and groundwater must have gotten mixed together, and the solution must have risen to the surface here. And the plants. Let's take a look at this one here, for example. The Quella plant. I've only seen this plant grow in the mudflats of the North Sea. It can also be grown indoors, and it's sold in gourmet grocery stores as a vegetable. This plant is packed with nutrients and minerals, and has a very salty taste. Oh, Cleo, yes, you'll like this. Tasty, eh? And here we have arrowgrass, which only usually grows in the dune landscapes that surround the Black Sea and the North Sea. Unbelievable. I wonder how these grass species all ended up here. I assume migrating birds must have transported them. That's so exciting. Cleo, let's go.
So why are these plants growing right here? The answer lies not far away. Since the region is rich in salt, there are other interesting structures to be found, such as the Mont Cali Mountain. Made entirely out of salt, this man-made mountain was created by piling up tons of excavated salt from the region. And this is done on a daily basis. Every day, the mountain is replenished with at least 20,000 tons of salt so that it continues to grow.
This has to be the first table salt mountain that I've ever climbed. 95% pure sodium chloride. The rest must be clay. The residents here call this area the land of the White Mountains. Monte Cali is one of them. If you look behind me, you'll see the pit of Philippsthal, which is being excavated to build the next Cali-type mountain here. Monte Cali has a height of 520 meters. There's a 40% gradient, and man, I am out of breath already.
It's a long ascent, but it's all going to be worth it.
What an incredible 360-degree view from up here. In the south, approximately 60 kilometers away from here, I can see the Wasserkuppe of the Rhone Mountains. I was there only 2 days ago. In the east, I can see the large Inselberg Mountain, which is almost 1,000 meters high. In the west, there's a large Meisner Mountain, which isn't hard to miss at all. And if you look more closely towards the north, you'll be able to see the Harz mountain range, where the Brocken is located. What an amazing view. And all of it thanks to a man-made mountain.
No sight of humans whatsoever at first.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Well, I must say, I'm really impressed by the hall. My uncle always told me stories about it. He used to be a former GDR citizen who actually worked down in the pit of the Unterbriesbach.
Over there.
Yes, exactly. And is it true that large tunnels were drilled here, so that Russian tanks would be able to move through them to resurface in the west?
Oh, I think that is a big rumor that has been going around.
So the story isn't true.
No, it's a myth. There's no connection between any of the pits whatsoever. I worked as the supervisor of the Wintersaal plant for 30 years, and I was overseeing the pit for most of that time. I was also the security engineer of the entire plant here for the past 8 years, so I would know.
And you never heard any suspicious noises that were emitted by the tanks?
Absolutely not. Salt is a very good sound transmitter. And all that we ever heard here were excavating demolitions.
And what about former working colleagues that were on the other side of the border? Were workers ever traded?
No, that didn't exist here either. Since the fall of the Berlin Wall, however, we've had many workers join these plants because production stopped on the other side. Some of these workers still work at our plants today.
But the salt mines themselves are continuous, right?
Yes, there are salt deposits, so these salt deposits are continuous throughout the Thuringian forest and all the way throughout the southwest, such as in the city of Fulda.
So do you think that Monte Cali will exist forever?
Well, neither one of us will live to experience this, but I think that the construction of Monte Cali will finally cease 50 years from now.
So the mountain will continue to grow for a little longer. Mont Cali has sustained an entire region up until now. But a high salt content in the environment can also have a somewhat negative effect on nature as well. Salt can be found everywhere in this region, especially around the Vara River. Too much salt has proved to be detrimental to the Vara. Its salt levels can actually be compared to those found in the Black Sea. Freshwater fish are unable to reproduce here, and for a valley where industry and nature lie so closely to one another, it is nature that currently sits in the unfortunate shadows.
Paulinchen, come here. Come on. Come over here.
Hello. I've only seen these sorts of cows back in India.
Oh, well, actually, these ones are from Romania, not from India.
Are these water buffaloes?
Yes, well, I'm Romanian myself, actually, and we've been herding water buffaloes back home for years. My grandfather used to breed them.
And they can handle the winter cold here?
Yes, even better than bulls.
Why? Because they've got less hair?
Yes, because they've got bristles instead. They wallow just like wild boars would do.
And how did you get the idea to breed water buffaloes right here?
Because when I saw the amount of swampland that existed here, I realized that it would be ideal for water buffaloes.
But it doesn't look very suitable for grazing. I guess water buffaloes and wild boars can handle it, though.
Yes, water buffaloes are not that susceptible to lungworms or liverworms, and so they're able to feed on wet grass as well.
Wow, what was that? Cleo, it's okay. Cleo is going mad.
Well, no wonder Cleo is slightly scared. Water buffaloes do not have the friendliest of faces, especially when you see them for the very first time. But having them graze in this area is a smart idea, because they also keep the grass low. The watery landscapes around the Vara River may not be grand in scale, but they are certainly impressive. Especially when it comes to waterfowl. Many of the migrating species have a stopover here, while others remain at this location year-round to raise their young.
I've been hiking through the land of the White Mountains for nearly 30 kilometers now. But I'm telling you, Monte Kilimanjaro will certainly be my last hike of the area here. I've never come across a region where industry and nature come so close together. Next up, I'm heading to the bird sanctuary of Raden. Let's go.
Raden is definitely worth a trip. More than 240 bird species can be found here. Amongst them, some gorgeous ones such as the great white egret and the great tit. And just like cormorants, there are colonies of dabchicks, gray herons, and black-headed gulls here. They pretty much gather wherever fish can be found. And there's plenty of fish around here.
Cormorants have multiplied quite a bit in Germany in the last few decades. That's because there are huge fish populations here. Cormorants solely feed on fish, and they breed in colonies. What's interesting about cormorants is they don't have any oil glands. So after they dive for fish, they have to dry up somewhere on a tree because their feathers are soaked with water.
This Garden of Eden would not be in existence if it wasn't for a man who simply wanted to find a home for one of his favorite birds, the stork.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You must be Mr. Graf, the father of all storks.
Yes, that's me.
For Walter Graf, this has been a lifelong mission. He had recognized the suitability of this region for storks back in the 70s. But in order to recreate naturally occurring water surfaces, large areas needed to be excavated. With the help of many hands, riverbanks were reinforced, and over time, more and more rare bird species made this area their home. On some days, there are more than 10,000 birds that gather here. Some of them can even be found next to the former border strip.
Well, I was actually born in the town of Gotha. I remember watching these migrating birds fly away and telling myself as a boy that these birds did not know what it meant to be in captivity. They can fly to Africa and to Southern Europe and wherever they want. It's amazing, though, that storks have made it to this area here as well. I love hearing romantic stories like these.
When we first reintroduced the storks into this area, we made sure that they were all free-flying species. We discovered a number of young storks on the other side of the border, only 3 kilometers away from here. We decided to open up an aviary here on this side, and soon after we've had 7 storks fly over here.
Folieren dann geöffnet und haben unsere mit drunter gemischt, Ost, West. Aber einmal hatten wir Begebenheit, da kommen 7 Störche von
5 of them were young,
also 5
and 2 of them were adult birds.
Pflanzen sich direkt bei uns vor der
We
Foliere.
were so happy when they made it to our side.
Happy, alle begeistert.
And did these same young storks then leave your aviary to migrate all the way to Africa as well?
Yes, we actually mixed these young storks in with other migrating storks that had come into our aviary. Generally, when these birds get used to humans, they tend to forget about their migration altogether, as food is provided. But luckily, they left, and our experiment of placing these young birds amongst all the others did not go to waste.
Would you say that you created more of an artificial environment for them at the beginning, where food was being provided and so on? I mean, what's really important ultimately is that these birds learn how to find food by themselves, and that they learn to settle wherever there is food in their natural environment.
Well, in 1982, we only had 1 pair of storks, and that was for the entire state of Hessen.
And over the years, more pairs of storks have settled in this region. It is something to be proud of. Andreas continues to walk through the area that the storks call their home. Once again, he is pulled away from the east-west border, and this time his journey takes him to the legendary Eisenach. Towering high above the city, one finds the old Wartburg Castle, a World Heritage Site, whose 1,000-year-old walls tell 100 stories. It is currently being renovated, but the doves of St. Elizabeth can still be seen. Cleo, on the other hand, must be thinking about her next meal. Even Luther and Goethe spent much time here.
The view from up here is absolutely amazing. Look at the Wartburg Castle. Looks as if it grew straight out of the rocks. I think it's the prettiest castle in all of Thuringia. I can even see my hometown of Gotha from here. There are also tons of raptors that can be seen up here.
One of them being the common buzzard, which has eyes sharp enough to see what's crawling at the border over there. The bomb crews near Ifta, which is dedicated to the memory of the Iron Curtain, can even be seen from the air. Andreas Kieling continues hiking towards the north. It's still possible to recognize marks left behind by the border strip. Soon he will reach the ancient forest of Hainich, which was used as a military training area during the Cold War. Today, however, it represents one of Germany's most enchanting beech forests. True ancient forests do not exist in Germany anymore, but the Hainich is the closest replica of a once ancient forest, where immense beech trees grew tall and old.
The Hainich must be the prettiest forest I've seen on my entire journey so far. The beech trees surrounding me must be at least 150 to 200 years old. Let's not forget that this forest used to be under the control of the East German People's Army for a long time. In 1997, however, the entire forest area was turned into a national park.
There's an indescribable calm and strength about this forest. The rangers tend to allow nature to do its thing here without interrupting. Cleo feels right at home here too.
What's really special about this forest is that everything has been kept natural. When a tree dies off or falls over, it's left here and is not removed. And actually, these trees are still full of life. There are insects living in them, which woodpeckers and other birds feed on. And the trees provide necessary nesting grounds.
Fallen trees are used wisely by woodpeckers inhabiting the Hainich. With so many varieties of woodpecker species in Germany, whether it's the great spotted woodpecker, the black woodpecker, or the green woodpecker, there is more than enough food in this region alone for the great spotted woodpeckers of Germany. And the forest nourishes all kinds of senses this time of year, especially when it comes to the scent of blooming white flower beds, upon which Andreas will come across soon.
The entire forest smells like an herb garden, especially these white flower buds right here, which belong to the wild garlic plant. It's actually a very old vegetable that has an extremely strong garlicky taste and smell. It's most potent and tasty just before the flowers bloom. Cleo, I can't believe you want to eat that plant. Dogs usually hate the taste of wild garlic.
Amidst all the spring blossoms, there are also animals, of course, and some of them tend to leave their marks behind.
What we've got here is a typical wild boar wallow. As you can see, the water is quite murky still, which means that the boars were here not too long ago, possibly last night or just this morning. Boars need to wallow regularly in order to get rid of parasites, but they also do this to regulate their body temperature since pigs in general are not able to sweat. So they like to cool off in these mud baths. Cleo seems quite excited. I guess the boars aren't too far away from here. I'll take my chance. Cleo, come.
And indeed, Cleo senses something.
Why are you pulling like that, Cleo? Enough! There's a fawn lying right in front of us. It's no more than 3 or 4 days old. Generally, they don't emit any scent that early on in life. That way, they protect themselves from predators such as foxes. But Cleo was able to smell this fawn. I assume the mother is not too far away from here, possibly observing me. So I think it's better if you leave.
Mother deers don't worry too much about leaving their fawns behind in calm parts of the forest, since fawns are naturally protected by their camouflaged fur that resembles the woods. And deep in the heart of the Hainich forest, and not too far away from here, lies one of the oldest trees in Germany. Meet the ancient begging oak tree.
Said that this famous oak tree is at least 1,000 years old. But actually, it's really difficult to determine the exact age of such old trees, because in order to find out, one would have to take core samples. The problem is that most of these old trees do not have any core wood anymore, because it's rotted away over the years.
Wildcats also make the Hainich forest their home. They need the forest to survive, and thus they can only be found in the very few remaining forests of Germany these days. People even tend to mix them up with domestic cats, though it's easy to tell the difference just by looking at the ringed pattern of their tails or their facial features. Yet there is no difference between both cat species when it comes to preying on mice. The Hainich forest has left a permanent impression on Andreas. He now continues his journey past the Vara Valley Lakes and towards the Eichsfeld, where he will come across a band of raccoons. He'll then continue his trek towards the Harz mountain range, where a mystical cave and an exciting underwater dive await him.